The original pondage pastures was some of the first in Australia that were built here. So the first walls were actually built in the mid-50s with another campaign conducted by colonial sugar refineries in the mid to late 70s. So there's now in excess of 13 k's of levee banks on the property, which result in about 2,500 acres of pondage pasture. Some of the most highly valued land on the property. It is extremely valuable to us in dry periods. We view the well-established pondage pasture as having a carrying capacity of 2 beasts to the acre for 6 months of the year.
This is a large area. It's several hundred hectares in size, and it's right on the estuarine interface of the Rocky Dam Creek system and Boundary Creek and Marklands Creek. So it has a big supply of juvenile fish looking for a wetland to enter, reside in and grow up in as their nursery. So it's the ideal location. Diadromous species such as barramundi and tarpon and giant herring, things like mangrove jack in more riverine sections, they move from the estuary into the freshwater as juveniles, and then they reside in here for a few years, and then they have to go back to saltwater to complete their life cycle. So connection and remediating barriers to fish passage such as ponded pasture bum walls and causeways, weirs and pipes is essential for those diadromous species. In terms of economic contribution via commercial, recreational, indigenous fisheries, things like barramundi, these are critical locations. We've been working here at Stuart Borg's property at Marklands at Kamala for the past 8 years, working through habitat improvement, through the augmentation of deep refuge pools with large woody debris. Lots of large hardwood root balls were salvaged instead of being burnt. We've utilised them in the refuge pools, and we've got 2 types of fishways on the wetland, both a rock ramp and a cone fishway. Implemented off-stream watering points to get the cattle more out of the wetland and more drinking the fresh water. Put up riparian fencing, and a whole range of works have been undertaken here. Ponded pastures typically where an earthen bund wall is placed across the intertidal salt couch marine plain to distinguish between marine waters on one side and then create fresh waters on the other side. Generally between sort of 300 and 600 millimetres deep in the wet season, and then in the dry season it goes completely dry. For fish, ponded pastures can be highly productive fisheries, sustaining important commercial, recreational, indigenous fish species such as barramundi. They provide key nursery habitats where they stand a great chance of surviving because they're at such a size they're not going to get eaten by the myriad of predators down in the estuaries. And many other fish replicate that strategy, such as tarpon, giant herring, striped scats, and a little important fish for the ecosystem is the empire gudgeon. However, sometimes they can be too shallow and go dry, and so the fish that have moved into the ponded pasture often perish. The refuge pool at Marklands is approximately 3 metres deep and has lots of logs in it. It's about 40 metres long by 15 metres wide. It stays permanent all year. It provides terrific refuge, and sampling last year recorded 87 juvenile freshwater barramundi. Those little barramundi were very well conditioned. They were quite fat. They'd moved in that year at approximately 50 to 100 millimetres long, and within a year they'd grown to 450 millimetres. In fact, we got one tag return, one that we tagged in May this year at 280 millimetres, was caught last month at 480 millimetres, 30 kilometres down the estuary, up along the coast and at Serena.
By introducing the fish ladder into this particular passageway, it's allowed fish to migrate upstream where they would have struggled in the past, and now through monitoring over the last 8 odd years that since it's been installed, we now have proven that it's allowing fish to migrate up and grow throughout the seasons. It's nothing better on a late Sunday afternoon to come back with mates and family and a few beers and kick back, catch a fish, and enjoy life for a change.
When the bum wall is created to create the ponded pasture, often a little spillway is incorporated, and then we might have significant drops. And a significant drop is anything more than 100 millimetres. Juvenile fish aren't very good swimmers, and juvenile fish are moving into here, so we need a way to get them in, and that's fish ladders. Basically, that's a series of underwater stairs where we have a small rise of about 80 millimetres and then create a pool for them to rest and regain their energy, and then they use what's called burst speed, where they can go really, really fast but only for a short duration, to go in between the rocks where the velocity's fast, and they'll get into the next pool. It's important to prioritise which wetlands have things like fishways remediated or retrofitted to them, and same with other habitat improvement attributes such as the refuge pools. So I think if it's good enough to have a fishway, well, refuge should definitely be looked at. And with a changing climate where we have more sporadic rainfall, and when it rains it's more intense, and then it's a little bit hotter, so we're having more evaporation, having less infiltration, and because these wetlands are at the bottom of the catchment, they're capturing a lot of sediments, they're likely to go drier a bit quicker. So refuge is something that's really important moving forward to sustain these wetland systems. So here today we're doing the electrofishing survey, and we've just caught thousands and thousands of fish in this wetland. If you catch typically a barramundi or a mangrove jack, they're popular species to be tagged. It does provide some really useful information about migration and where they're moving to and how fast they grow. If you see something at the top of the barramundi, just take the algae off the tag. On the tag it'll have the number, the tag number, and it'll also have a number there to ring. It's really important to measure the fish. You don't have to take a photo, but you could take a photo. Now, if it's legal size, above 58 centimetres, you're fine to keep it still. Tell them where you caught it. They're not going to take you a secret fishing spot. They only want to know a 5 by 5 kilometre grid section. That information will help us build more fishways, to help put more barramundi in the system, and have more healthier stocks and more fish for commercial and recreational anglers. So yeah, please return your tags. The data is extremely important to collect so that you can then go back and show decision makers, you can show landholders, you can show the local community, you can show government the results of what you're doing.
I do believe in time farmers and landholders will be rewarded for our environmental efforts, and so if we can sort of break ground in that area and actually prove that it can be done sustainably and long term without costing our own production, I see it all as a bonus.